Well, good morning. Looks like we're live on YouTube this morning, and happy June 2nd. Some of us have some different backdrops. I see you, Chris Gadowski and Heather Grecius, and we're reporting back to the ESC slowly but surely. So new changes of venue for some of us. Anyway, welcome, good morning. And let me turn it over to our facilitators, Dave and Jim, to get us going.
Good morning, everybody. Here's the check-in for today. Who are you? Position in district. How are you? Time constraints, issues or elephants, expectations, and then what is another profession other than education that fascinates you? And let's start today with Nancy.
So I'm Nancy Leonard. I'm a retired principal. I'm feeling pretty good this morning. It's a little muggy. Time constraints, I don't have any, no issues or elephants at this point. I expect us to get a lot done today. And something that fascinates me is I've been watching the Titan games. And so people that are really into strength and that sort of stuff, that fascinates me.
Very good. Laura Leppy.
Good morning. I'm Laura Leppy. I teach math at Hallstrom. I am a little tired because you guys know how much I like mornings. But I have no issues or elephants and no time constraints. And yeah, it is muggy. It feels like New York here. It's a little fun. I don't know if it fascinates me per se, but I always wanted to play a lawyer on TV. And I didn't want to be a real lawyer because that involved a lot of reading. But I always thought it'd be really fun to be like Ally McBeal growing up, even though she was kind of a disaster now that I'm older and I actually understand what she was talking about. But that was that, or I wanted to be in the medical field or an astronaut, which kind of goes in all different directions. But that was all three of those things always fascinated me.
Dave Lockley.
Morning, I'm Dave Lockley, president of the District 12 Educators Association. Doing well this morning. I have no issues or elephants. Don't have any time constraints. Look forward to a productive day. And I'm pretty much fascinated with anything in the sciences. I would have no interest in being a science teacher. No offense, Marty McCarthy. But science in general just fascinates the heck out of me. So I could sit and listen to scientists talk about their job for hours.
Marty.
Marty McCarthy, principal of Thornton Middle School. No issues, no elephants. Expectation is just to continue the collaborative work. I am interested in being a scientist. That is something that would interest me. Has fascinated me my whole life, particularly like a wildlife biologist where I could just be in the middle of nowhere and be studying something weird like the population densities of penstemon or something like that. So there you go.
And I still don't see Laura on, so we'll come back to her if she does come on. And Darren is coming on late, so we'll check him in when he gets here. Kathy.
Good morning, Kathy Plummer. I'm on the Board of Education. I am doing well today. No issues or elephants. I expect we'll get through what we're gonna do today. I should be more clear on that, but I think it's something little maybe since we don't have any financial information. I have no time constraints. And what fascinates me is kind of like international rescue work. Like I think UNHCR stuff and kind of worldwide stuff that's always seems cool to me. I want to work for the UN or maybe for the Carter Center in Atlanta someday.
Matt.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Matt Schmidt. I am the principal at Pathways. I'm doing fine this morning. No issues or elephants, no time constraints today. My expectations I guess, to get through what we can in these times of not knowing what we have yet. So we'll just play as it goes. And I have always been fascinated with being a professional musician, like playing Red Rocks or, being a part of a band. It's always sounded totally different than being an educator. And I love music more than almost anything. I don't play very well, but I think it would be fun.
Mila.
Good morning. I'm Mila Shepard, Chief of Human Resources. I'm doing fine today. This commute was a little rough. I left my phone at home, so at some point here in the next little while, there'll be an emergency visit from the houseman with my phone. But getting out of the house wasn't without its hitches this morning. Anyway, doing fine other than that, and no issues or elephants. I think that we will get get some work done and see what the rest of the week brings in terms of budget decisions. But I think my career choice, if I weren't an educator, would have been an architect. And every vacation photo album I've ever created is just like 1,000 pictures of buildings and like corbels and interesting windows and so looking back over the years, it's like there are no people in any of your pictures. It's all buildings. Anyway, I think I would have been an architect.
Andy.
Sandy Sorensen. I am a science teacher at North Glen High School. I don't have any issues or elephants. Expectations that in a few hours we get through some conversation about compensation, whatever that might be. I do have the same time constraint as I did yesterday. So a little before 9, I'll have to go do my camp invention thing. And since we worked out a lot of the bugs yesterday, hopefully it won't be quite as long as I was gone yesterday. So another profession that fascinates me, well, I think in another life, when I had my act together, when I first went to college, I was a doctor. But science teacher is a fine substitute for that. And my master's degree is in public policy, so I'm a little obsessed with all things public school, public education policy. So perhaps that's in my future. Who knows?
Linda.
Good morning, I'm Linda Walther. I am a retired counselor and teacher from the district. I have no time constraints, no issues or elephants. I'm doing well. Expectations are simply to get as much done as we can. And I've always been interested in law.
Allison.
Allison Alter. I'm a social studies teacher at Horizon High School. No issues or elephants. My expectations are, just to get done what we can get done without having numbers. Did I miss something? I got it all right. And then profession that fascinates me. Well, I think if I were to like really think about it when I was younger, I should have been like a music critic or something, because I listen to it and I like analyze it, and I can't carry a tune to save my life, but I really like talking about it. Or like something to do with woodworking, which I also really like. So I don't know.
Deborah.
Good morning. I am Deborah Blake, special education teacher at Arapahoe Ridge Elementary School. I am well today. I'm having fun having my daughter home and taking care of her and playing mommy a little bit. So that's kind of fun. I have no time constraints today, no issues or elephants. I expect to get done whatever it is we can today. And other career that would fascinate me, I have two. Psychology fascinates me, the working of the mind and behaviors and why we are the way we are and what forms us. That fascinates me, and I could talk about that forever. But I love sharks. I would love to be a marine biologist and to get in the water and swim with a great white shark. Yeah, that would be really cool to me.
Shelley.
Good morning, Michelle D. Rock, third grade teacher at Meridian. I'm doing well today. No issues with elephants. I do have a time constraint. I have an appointment that I'll have to leave for, and likely won't be back in time if we use the whole length of time. I probably have to leave at about 10:45. I grew up in a family with teachers, and I kind of always wanted to be a teacher, but for a career day, my dad said, you have to choose something else. You already know about teaching. And so I went to Stapleton International and did United flight simulators. And as I was sitting here thinking about that, like the military and airlines and flight and jumping out of airplanes, that kind of stuff excites me. But I also had an interest in like the Forest Service and park ranger. And so maybe there was something in my head about uniforms. I don't know.
Heather Espinoza.
Morning, Heather. I teach over at Wood Glen, and my internet's not being super cooperative today, so I apologize if I freeze up, but no issues or elephants. I am fine. Expectation is to do good work with what we can. Another profession that is interesting to me, I love these people who travel the world and get paid to do it. So I would love to end up there at some point.
Bo.
Good morning, Bo Fobert. I serve the district as Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction. No issues, elephants, or time constraints. Yeah, I am prone to flights of career fancy all the time. Most of them, like others have mentioned, I have no skill, aptitude, or talent for. However, it's interesting what Heather just shared, something that I would love to do and think I might reasonably be able to do would be a travel writer. And I'm not ruling that out when this chapter closes, actually. So I hold on to that because I love seeing the world. And if I could get paid to do it, all the better.
Colleen.
Colleen Gardner, math teacher from Shadow Ridge Middle School. I'm doing well today, much better than yesterday. I was really tired yesterday. Time constraints, just my roaming internet data might freeze up and then I'll have to leave you because it won't let me log in anymore. No issues or elephants. I expect to get done whatever we can today. My husband and I spent an entire summer traveling to different music festivals, selling wooden roses, and I just loved putting them together into bouquets. So I always want to be a florist when I was done, because who doesn't love receiving a beautiful bouquet of flowers? So.
Chris.
So I'm Chris, superintendent. I'm good today. It was great to see the parking lot having so many cars in it and to walk into the building and see lots of people assembled in here. The times I've been in the ESC since we went to remote learning, it's been dark and dreary and eerie. And so there's energy and life and light back in the space today that has me lifted up. So feeling good about that. No issues, elephants, time constraints, get done what we can get done expectation. And in terms of fascinating careers, I would just share with you, Shelley, that maybe around the same time you were doing the flight simulator, I was loading baggage into planes at United Airlines one summer because I had aspired to work in the travel business and to work for United. I was a kid who traveled nowhere. And that was before they had any weight restrictions on suitcases. So I think I jacked up my back in those days in ways that I've never quite recovered. Sometime over cocktails, I'd share with you a lot of fun stories about my mishaps and adventures from that summer. The one career that's truly been fascinating to me that I know I'm completely unequipped to do is trauma surgeon, trauma doc in an emergency room. I think in these jobs, we all have lives in our hands that we're molding, shaping, influencing, but the speed that you've got to make really difficult decisions and assess what's going on and respond with lots of emotion and other things going on. I just think the folks who are able to do that are fascinating, and could never do that job, but grateful that we have people who can.
Heather Gracious.
Good morning, everyone. Heather Gracious, Elementary Director of Student Support Services. I'm doing great today. Although I'm happy to be at the office because we have no internet at my house, nor did we yesterday. So I might be here tomorrow too. Let's see, a profession that fascinates me. Anything that really has to do with like pure talent. Like, my daughter, longs to be on Broadway, and it is so fun to watch her. And it frightens me to think of being up on a stage, like singing and bearing your soul to people. But I really admire that. And I think it would be really fun to do. So.
Dorman.
My name is Dorman Land. I'm a teacher at Century Middle School. I have no issues or elephants. I expect this to do good work. A profession that I've always kind of interested me was being a houseman. I think that would be good, taking care of the house and the garden and delivering miscellaneous forgotten items. I think that'd be an excellent job. So that's where I stand.
Come on over, Dorman.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say you're gonna get a lot of offers around that one, Dorman. Jim.
I'm Jim. I'm one of your facilitators. I'm doing well today, so much better than yesterday. It's hard to believe. I don't have any time constraints. My expectations are we're going to finish up some items today and get them ready to move forward with. I don't have any issues or elephants. Another profession would be some form of social psychology.
Very good. And I'm Dave. I'm your other facilitator. Doing pretty good today. A little tired, but doing all right. I have no time constraints or issues or elephants. Same expectations that everybody else has. Get done whatever we can get done today. And as far as profession, I've dabbled in a lot of them. I've been a professional musician. I was a professional photographer at one time, and then I fell into the teaching habit and spent a lot of time doing that. But the one that fascinates me more than anything else is interpreters. I would love to be an interpreter. I don't speak anything other than English. I speak really bad Spanish, but just watching what they do amazes me. And so I'd love to be an interpreter. I think it'd be fun. So, all right, Mila, Dave, where do we go from here?
All right, so we're gonna, if it's all right with everyone, we're going to go back and review the special placement rules language that we looked at yesterday. If there are no questions, concerns, or comments about that, then we would ask Dave and Jim to run us through a consensus vote on that. Obviously, if there are concerns or questions, we can deal with those. There's a item of housekeeping that was on our list before COVID that I wanted to circle back around and see if people just talk about that for a moment. And then Mila and I met to draft some MOA language for Comm Committee, and also the taking the recommendation from the CTE placement and credit group yesterday that we had, and wrote that into contract language that we could then look at, discuss, ask questions, talk in small groups, walk through whatever else we need to do to get that ratified today. So if that sounds good to everybody, Mila, did I forget anything in that list?
I don't think so.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind then opening up your shared drive and pulling up in the Comp Committee folder, a document called the SEL TOSA, the one we looked at yesterday. I'll give a second for all my little bubbles to pop in saying that people have opened it up. There was, as I'm slowly talking, maybe I'll take a sip to slow myself down. I used to do this in the classroom. This was my version of wait time. That's one of the reasons why the kids thought I drank so much coffee, was anytime I needed to like force myself to wait, I'd take a sip or two of coffee. One girl figured it out in all the years that I did that. And I think she thought I was going too fast. She's like, "Mister, you need to drink some more coffee. You need to slow down." Anyways, I think we've got everybody in there, at least most folks in there now. So there was one, and I've highlighted it in yellow, comments that was made after the fact that I went ahead and incorporated into the document change. So I added the phrase after the year 1920-22 school year, because it was pointed out to me the way we wrote this, it implies that people who were hired before the 18-19 school year would not be able to be replaced on the salary schedule if they moved. And so what this phrase does is create the window without calling out a set of grandfathers. It creates a window that says those that were hired before that were not replaced in this period of time, but also if after this point, so after this previous school year, you move in, you can be replaced in that language. So it basically creates the window and grandfather clause without singling any other group out, which is kind of our perceived pattern of trying to write in documents so that we're not singling out a single group. But yet it still makes sense for people moving forward on how to implement the rule, when the rest of us aren't here. And I don't know, my grandkids are the president or HR director here in Adams 12.
I think my only question or comment is there a better place for the highlighted yellow phrase? Reading it fresh this morning, it's a little awkward in the middle of that sentence. I wonder if we start the sentence with that phrase, but first, let's just see if conceptually that makes sense to people and accomplishes what we hope that it does.
I just wonder, being a grammar Nazi, I wonder if it'd be better without the commas around it.
That's just what I was going to say. It doesn't need them.
Could we start the sentence with after the 1920 school year if well, why doesn't one of you get in there and fix it and let's see what it looks like.
I'm doing it right now.
Okay.
You can either put it first and then put a comma after it, or you could have left it without the commas, I think. Either way. Nice catch, Sandy.
Good to have.
This is what happens when Dave makes edits to documents instead of other people.
So Dave, I'm assuming you want to you want the consensus vote after people have read this, is that correct?
Yeah, if there's no other questions, comments, or concerns, then yes.
Okay.
I think we need one comma after the word rules before the word then in the sentence that has the after the 2019-2020 school year. Super.
Still have a couple people reading, so.
I wonder if we should switch they and then to they then shall be replaced.
That sounds good to me.
Actually, if you move then after shall, it makes more sense. They shall then be replaced on the certified.
Even better.
Can you say that again, Nancy? I didn't catch it. Sorry.
Just shall and then. They shall then be replaced.
Okay, anything else? Any questions? Still see a couple people reading, so. All right, are we ready for thumbs? Let me see your thumbs, folks. Help me out here, Jim. I see consensus. You concur,
You've got
Jim?
it, yep.
Okay.
It's it, that's it.
All right.
All right, Dave's gonna put that in the TA folder. Will you do that?
I will be doing that. All right, so the other piece of housekeeping that we wanted to bring to your attention and see if we could deal with has to do with Article 14.13 in the master agreement. It is a set of 10 pages of standards and criteria describing the general condition of jobs in the teaching profession, about growth and professionability standards. However, with the adoption of SD 191 and our use of the Apex Committee as our 1338 committee, the role of developing standards and implementation of evaluation and whatnot really falls under that criteria. And the standards that we have listed out here are much longer, are inaccurate to what has been adopted by CDE and Adam 12 as our state standards, standards for teaching. And they're also, if we were to try to put all of the standards for all of the different jobs into the master agreement, then we would like double the size of the printed document. And so we were wondering if we needed, if we were in a place where we could get rid of these and potentially replace it with a statement that just says standards and criteria will be developed by the district's Apex Committee, which serves as the 1338 committee in accordance with state law. Wanted to get people's reactions to that. And if that was a direction people felt comfortable with, then we could maybe write up a statement. If people didn't feel comfortable with it and we need to keep it in the document, then we would need to table this conversation so that we can figure out how and what would be the best way to write or edit the standards. But right now, the standards are not accurate reflections of what teachers are asked to, or psychologists, or so on in the system. So it's an inaccurate set of criterias and standards.
Allison got her hand up, and then Laura Leppi. Allison?
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering if there is any sort of a downside to removing it and just referencing another document. Like, do we want something in our contract, or is there really no point to it?
I mean, my short answer is right now they're all invalid because state law supersedes and regulations supersedes what's in the documents. So right now it's void segment. So right now we are using state standards developed by CDE and whatnot, adopted by the school board per state statute. And so we could have some, if people have a value in having it, we need to find a way to put the accurate information in here. And so that's why my recommendation was a sentence that said, adopted by the Apex Committee, which serves as the state 1338 committee, which is the reference to the state law that designates how to write and adopt professional standards.
And I agree with that. I agree with that. And I think that for when you have documents that change, subject to external agency, changes, I think it's always just better to let those changes, keep that document up to date. And if you just reference that document, then I think it just seems like a more efficient way to handle this item.
Laura Leppi.
I also kind of was wondering what we could do. I know that I personally like to be able to see it in physical, like where my master's is, look for it and have it, as opposed to searching on like the interwebs somewhere, or like trying to find the apex for this year, or going into Randa and logging in for something and something. So if there's a way to do maybe something general and then refer to like the Apex committee, something that at least some teachers who, like myself, prefer to refer to their paper contract and like to look through that to be able to see kind of what they're looking for, what they need to be doing. I don't know if there's a way to meld those so that we don't have to change it constantly, because I totally see the value in referring to something that is fluid externally. I would just like to be able to see something that might be still in writing, if there's a way to do that sort of with a nice clean overview, if that's an option.
Yeah. I think there's a half option. I don't know that we can do that in my physical paper copy that just disappeared because of the maybe disappear. But you know, one of the summer projects that have been on the back burner for when we publish the new contract is have it be link enabled for the PDF version. And so there could be a way to embed the link to Apex to that section where it refers to state standards into the document from the PDF side of the house. Like I said, it wouldn't be, we could refer to it in writing in here, but we wouldn't be able to have it referred to in like written out, because I'm just being like honest, the process of editing of the state standards to a place that would be condensed enough to be good in here would be so generic, it would really invalidate the purpose of having it written in the document to start with.
Linda.
I think it's,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead, Linda.
I think it's really important that we have something in the document for reference for teachers. I agree with Laura that people are very accustomed to going to this document to kind of figure things out, or else figure out they can't figure it out and call somebody. I would like to see something in there, whether it's a PDF or I don't care how it's placed in there, but I think it's important to keep some kind of information in the contract.
Sandy.
Dave Lockley, I guess I was just wondering how often you hear from any member and need to refer to that list.
To be 100% honest, in the last 4 years, the only time it's ever been referred to at the moment has been when someone says, that's not in my job, because it says here in the contract, it's not in my job, which is inaccurate based on the adopted state standards for jobs. It's mostly in the like some of the librarian positions and some of the others that it says it's not in here, which means it's not accurate, which is not really the correct way to interpret the document, because we also don't have all of the positions available to folks. I mean, for the most part, these are vague, but they just get referred, when it gets referred to, it's referred to inaccurately. I have never had anyone say to me, I don't know how to do my job as a librarian or literacy coach, and I look up I point them to the state standards or the standards here, and it says obtain and use information about diverse learners. I've never once done that. You know, these standards are relatively vague and make great sense from an evaluation standpoint, but they're really not job descriptions, right? And some people will try to use them as job descriptions. And so at the very least, the only time that I've had opportunity to point people to it or have people ask me about it is when they're trying to use them as job descriptions versus evaluation standards, which are what, at least the way I read them as written, are intended to be done as. We don't have job descriptions in the document, and so people use these standards to try to make it their job description and say that if it's not in here, I don't have to do it, which is not
So maybe,
not accurate.
just because I was thinking about what Lara said, maybe in the digital version of the master agreement, there could be a link there. Refer to this link for full job descriptions or something. And then in the paper copy, I don't really know, maybe you could just say.
Well, just as a reference, these aren't job descriptions, right? They're evaluation standards. We don't have job descriptions anywhere in the master agreement. And so if there's an interest in doing job descriptions, that would be a separate and apart thing, because this is all about evaluation criteria, not about job descriptions. And I hear people's need, and what I hear Laura talking about is a need for a job description, but these aren't it. These are evaluation standards.
Okay, Dave, I'm going to interrupt you real quick. I see that Laura Mitchell just jumped on, so let's get her checked in if we can. Laura, here's the check-in. Who are you? Position in district? How are you? Time constraints, issues, elephants, expectations, and then what is another profession that just fascinates you? You're muted, Laura.
Good morning. Just sincere apologies for being late. I overslept and have no excuses. So I am so sorry and very embarrassed. But let's see, Laura Mitchell, I serve on the Board of Ed. I have no issues or elephants. My expectations are we're gonna get through some of these things that that we worked on yesterday and start to make progress. And I need to find out exactly where you are. And then a job that fascinates me. It might be teaching, because I've never been in a classroom, and just getting to spend so much time on the board and learning how the system works, and just finding out that, you know, when you're sitting in a classroom, you have this thought in your head about how it works. And when you get behind the scenes and pull back the curtain, you find out there really is magic going on back there, and how much work it really takes to manage a classroom, and the skills that it takes to keep 30 kids going in a somewhat similar direction, and moving them and closing gaps and finding gaps. It's way more complicated than anybody really appreciates.
Thanks, Laura. Dave or Mila, do you want to get Laura caught up as to what we're doing currently, and then we'll catch her up later on the rest?
Hey, Laura, we're just, we've reached tentative agreement. We have a consensus agreement to move forward with the SEL TOSA language as revised. And if you want to look in your comp committee folder, you'll find that SEL TOSA. And it's what we talked about yesterday with the insertion of one more little date phrase. So yay, we've had a productive morning, already one TA. And then what we're working on right now is just a bit of housekeeping that Dave and I wanted to bring forward for consideration. And we're engaged in what we intend to be a brief conversation, which is starting with Article 14.13, which is the Apex evaluation information. We have like 10 pages in our master agreement that replicate the state standards. However, they're not up to date. And those are the standards only for certified teachers, not for all of the other certified employee groups. And so in order to be all inclusive, we would have to expand the size of this publication, you know, perhaps by double. And then those state standards are prone to change, and the annual change makes this a task that seems really inefficient and unproductive for us to attempt to duplicate all the standards for all the certified groups in this document. But we wanted to hear from the group to determine if there are other ways to find the standards at any given time. Teachers are, Randa, it's right at the fingertips, online, maybe linking them if we create a PDF searchable version of the master agreement, which Dave and I have wanted to do for a while. Maybe we could have links to standards, but rather than try to keep up with the evolution of standards and be all inclusive with all the standards, we wanted to just see what this group's appetite for eliminating those and making just like perhaps a statement that just says the standards we use will be determined by the Apex committee in alignment with state, statutes, or some simple statement that references that we use standards, and then stop trying to redundantly duplicate the standards. So I think that brings us to where we are. Dave, anything you want to add?
No, I think that's the right spot. And I think there was a couple more questions people had, and then we can kind of figure out what people want to do from there. I think Laura still has her hand up. I'm not sure if that was from previously or if that's a new question.
Laura Leppy, you're on.
Okay, it was new because you mentioned something about the job description, and that wasn't what I was hinting at. I was more thinking like, can we put just that overarching like standard that doesn't change and not all of the criteria underneath, and reference like the PDF for the criteria, I guess, because my only concern with saying like the Apex committee, which I understand that comes from the state, is that teachers or staff or whatever, they might think it's referring to like there are two people that represent like the Apex, because that's what I thought initially, like the two people from the school that represent Apex. And I don't want there to be confusion that whoever's doing the like, like instructing of it or instructional help with it is the person determining the standards that they're being evaluated on. So if there's a way to do like the teacher and then your standards, but like if you need details or the details for all of these standards and the criteria for all of these standards can be found online at the CDE website, or something that references like the state as opposed to just a committee, but still like what Linda said, letting teachers who have been at, reading their contract for years to find this information, at least have something that maybe lists a super concise, like these are the blocked outlines. And I don't know how often those change, but if that's something that doesn't change super often, maybe doing something that's just overarching, here are your standards that you'll be evaluated on. Detailed criteria can be found online at CDE's website, something to that effect.
Yeah, so I think there's a phraseology that could do something like that in a sentence around, I don't want to refer to CDE's website because if the law changes and says like next year, we don't have to use CDE's guidance, or the district chooses to go away from CDE's standards, we have that authority. So my suggestion would be like these standards will be made available on the district website, perhaps, like published on the district website, a statement like that. And to answer your other question about how often does it change, so I've been on the Apex committee for almost its entire existence, or at least 3/4 of it of its existence, and there has not been a single year where there wasn't a standards change in either the big teaching group or one of the subgroups, or a new group added, or a new group combined. There hasn't been a single year where that hasn't, where there hasn't been a major revision of one rubric or one set of standards or another. There aren't classroom teachers have a general standards, but those have changed a couple of times, those general standards, plus the other groups have changed multiple times throughout its exception. So that's why we've never tackled trying to rewrite these standards, for one, and two, why the suggestion of having the language just be that it will be adopted on the district website. So if there aren't other questions, Dave and Jim, if people are okay with at least seeing that replacement language, what I can do is we can draft it and bring it back to you whenever we come back in session next, and just have people react to it then. And if there are still concerns, then we can bring this back up next year. Does that
Yeah,
sound like a good plan?
Yeah, that sounds good, Dave. And I don't see any other questions. So that I was thinking that as you were saying that maybe that's what you could do. So
Agreed.
any other questions before we move on?
Well, I make sure we take a temperature check, see if people are okay with us writing that language and then bringing it back next week.
Yeah, is everybody good with that? See your thumbs?
Looks good.
Yep, looks good. All right.
Okay. So we'll
Thanks,
bring that
Dave.
back for our next session.
Sounds good.
All right, Mila's turn.
All right, so in the shared drive, under the folder called Compensation Committee, if you would there are two documents there. Go to the first one that's called Draft Compensation Committee MOA. I guess may as well start there, huh, Dave? What we think we're going to do at this point, this is kind of a long article, and Dave, I think we talked about dividing into our straw design groups to just have conversation about all the changes here. Dave Lockley, does that match what you were thinking?
Yeah, we were going to walk through this and the other draft and then go into straw design groups to have conversation and then come back to see where we're at.
Okay, so let me just walk you through it generally. So you see what we did. We used the protocol of, striking through anything that's in existing language that we think is no longer necessary. All capital letters indicate things that are new language. So this is the MOA that guides the work of the Compensation Study Committee. So based on some of the conversation yesterday, we always start with sort of the historical. This committee has been around since 2014, and what its mission is. We had a little bit of a summary about the work that was accomplished the year before, which we have removed. And then we just jumped to the charge for the 2021 school year. And that is to continue to work to define the teacher leader position. So that's just the work that you've heard a little bit. Marty gave a presentation on behalf of that committee back in February or March. That group wants to continue its work. Strike the market study for the CELTOSA. We have a resolution there. Continue to research and make recommendation regarding the creation of an incentive. So that's that subcommittee just continuing its work. We don't need new language, but just continuing that charge. We don't believe we need new language. We think that charge is broad enough to encompass the work that we had started and described to you yesterday. The next bullet, continue to research and make recommendation regarding the removing the master's degree requirement. And we struck the tail part of that sentence around as district professional development, or CTE. Oh, I think I need to remove the strikeout of the such as district professional development. We would just strike the CTE accreditation phrase because that group, like we talked about yesterday, had a really broad scope and chose to just narrowly focus on the CTE portion of movement across the salary schedule. But the question of what to do about a master's degree as a barrier for all certified teachers is still out there. And that committee would like to continue to research and explore and bring back some recommendations to this group if you were willing to hear that. And then the final bullet, a new one, would be to make recommendation to clarify and streamline the process and protocols for Article 21, intermediate salary steps. And this is something we did not really talk about yesterday, but it comes up because if you're going to make some different rules about how our CTE teachers move across the salary schedule, you get tangled up with the provisions of Article 21 that exist, the Intermediate Hours Board, that IHB process that's described in Article 21. And Dave and I both agree that there really should be some refinement, some streamlining of some clarification of the protocols that are in place for teachers in the IHB process. And so we'd like to spend time just more thoroughly exploring what's working and what's not working with regard to certified teachers and how the IHB board is working and those processes surrounding that. So that would be an additional charge to the group. And it comes up because we're in this territory and we're thinking about how that works. And it seems like it needs some attention.
The only thing I would add to that real quick, Mila, just as for context for folks, you know, the Apex or the IHB committee and that process, you know, it was developed a long time ago. It's a great value. That's not really what we're looking at doing. It's just some of the terminology, language, and things that used to exist just no longer exist in the same fashion. So how do we update the language for the kinds of trainings and the kind of opportunities and the kinds of things that are made available to our staff today versus what may have been in existence in its form when some of these different sections were written and addressed previously. And you know, there's like the section I think I mentioned before, we dropped it, but talking about like student teaching, how is that, you know, is that different, or how can we update that to encompass all the different types of unpaid internships that our teachers are managing in the system, that kind of thing, how to better equate and transition credits for people who are taking hours and credits similar to our CTE teachers. A lot of our elective teachers, their professional development, our SSPs, sorry, not our elective teachers, our SSPs, they take recertification credit and opportunities are not done in the same kind of format as the ones done for general education teachers. And so, you know, theirs is also a situation where their hours, the length of courses and their hours are very difficult to translate into our system. So just taking a look at it and then bringing back some potential recommendations to this committee for consideration is kind of what we were thinking in that space.
And then the rest of that document remains essentially the same, the composition of the committee. And then we struck the asterisk at the bottom that just referred to the placement of the existing cell TOSAs. That's no longer necessary. So, so those are the proposed changes to the charge to that study committee. And just to get all voices in the room, we thought we would briefly divide into our subgroups and just let people ask questions, have a conversation, and come back to the larger group with questions, clarifications needed, additions or concerns.
Yes. So when you go into your groups, my suggestion is that you designate somebody to take notes on this so you can report out on it, because there's quite a bit of stuff involved in it. So so if you would assign somebody to kind of take notes of what you talked about, if you've got questions, et cetera, I think that would help. Is that what you're thinking, Mila, too?
Yeah, and if people want to make comments directly on this document, just, you know, highlight the phrase that you're wondering or questioning or adding to and make a comment. That would be one way to take notes. Or if it's more, you know, broad conversational sort of thing, you could add paragraphs at the bottom if you wanted of this same document. Since we're in it and we're sharing it, might be easiest to just capture people's reflections at the bottom.
Okay. So are you ready to go to the groups?
Yeah, so Chad, I believe, has 3 groups. These are the straw design groups I think that we last used. So Chad, you there, and can you get us sent out to some groups?
And Chad, before you do that, put Jim and I in our own room separate from the 3 groups too, so that we're not live.
Sure. And how long did you want the rooms for?
Shall we say 15 minutes?
Okay.
Okay, one moment, please.
Okay.
Hey, Roddy. Or Chad. Chad, are you there?
Hi, we're here.
Hi there. I didn't see a countdown clock going on these breakout rooms, but it does.
Yeah,
Do you,
I just I had sent you an email, but it looks like they weren't working correctly. So I can go ahead and end the breakout rooms
why don't
manually
you
now.
do that? Because I think our time is up. And so,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, sounds good. All right, so everyone will be coming back in within the next 50 seconds or so.
Okay. We're dragging you back, kicking and screaming. Dave, you're on mute.
Hey, Jim, you might ask Mila about the two items that you just talked about to see where they want to place them. So,
Mila, where were we at yesterday for coming back to years of service credit? Were you going to bring some information back? I can't remember where we left at.
I think I shared verbally the information about 135 people and 800 and some $1,000. I don't have anything else to share, and I think it has to wait for compensation.
Okay, and then incentives, were we going back and look at that document again today?
That's inclusive of in the document we were just looking at. It's covered by one of the bullets.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everybody. Looks like we're all back. Dave and Jim, I want to be sure we take a break here in the next little while. So maybe we can hear comments and report outs from the groups, and then maybe take a little break.
okay, that sounds good. So group number one, can you share with us what you talked about?
Yeah, we talked quite a bit just about some general questions, but we made one comment on the MOA that I'm about to hit enter on, where there was just some concern around the perception about removing the master's degree requirement, as if we were removing the master's degree as a value to the system. Dorman brought this up last year. He was thumb sideways on it last year, and we put in a suggested edit that basically says, and someone else can wordsmith it, but the intent of it is to basically say, instead of removing the master's degree requirements, to create an alternative to the master's degree requirements, as more accurately capturing the work that I and Dorman kind of heard and thought was what the committee was asking to continue to do the work of, because we're not actually removing the master's degree. We're talking about creating an alternative to it.
Okay.
And then then we were spending a bunch of time talking about a little bit just more on the Article 21 concerns and whatnot. That I'd be more than glad if other groups have additional comments or concerns or just wonders about what that means. I can give you the brief version of what I was saying. Is that so there's a lot of what happens in the IHB space around credits being approved or not approved, or courses and whatnot, that's not here in the document. There are a lot of opportunities for our non-classroom certified educators, our OTs, PTs, counselors, and so on, that have a very difficult time accessing this material because their professional organizations don't provide classes and whatnot in the same kind of increments, similar to our CTE conversation we just had, where they don't provide the credits and increments that translate into this language. Now, Jason and I, who's the HR administrator, have worked out. We've gotten it smoothed out, and I think we're in a good space right now with much of this. However, it shouldn't be dependent on what Jason and I can figure out and which the IHB committee can figure out. It should be something that is written out and equitable for all people, so it's more sustainable and accessible and transparent for folks, which right now it's not transparent. There was a big shift for a large number of years in the IHB space. HR and DTA were just accepting everything. And then we went to a space of accepting almost nothing. And now we're in a different, we're in a better space of getting the language, applying the language as written. But by applying the language as written, it has created some of these conflicts and whatnot in the system. It's also an incredibly labor-intensive process from both a user and a administration end of it. So I'll briefly describe what it looks like. You have to apply with information for pre-approval. Then then a committee has to meet 5 times a year. We meet and approve each one of the documents, and we have to become the arbitrator of, does this class meet your job or not meet your job, or is this a real class or is this a pay for credit scheme? And then it gets sent back to you, and then you have to take the class and then reapply for the credits, providing the statements of learning. And then we have to judge whether or not that's accurate or not, or sufficient or not, and then return it back to you. And then a good chunk of them, especially new ones to the system, get denied because we either don't understand something, or there's a confusion, or people don't provide the correct information, and then they appeal it, and then Jason and I have to deal with the appeal. And it is an incredibly labor-intensive process, which is not what we believe to be the intent for it. And it can be very frustrating, and I don't think nearly as many people apply for it as maybe have access to it, just because it's annoying. And the number of things we deny because people didn't follow a step in the process is insane. A good chunk of people's applications or credits get turned in because we deny it, because we say, oh, sorry, you didn't pre-approve it, which is what the language says that you have to do. Or, oh, this is a class, not an educational experience, you should have bought the credit. It's just not very clear and transparent. And so I don't think the recommendation, what we would want to even do is, not necessarily, change it in the space of, taking away an access, but figuring out a way of making it more equitable for all parts of the certified employee group.
Okay. Group 2.
That's where we were when we got cut off.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. Group 2.
I think we're group 2. And we did not have a hugely deep conversation. Heather had an observation or question.
Yeah, I think, sorry, I wasn't sure what group we were either, Mila. I had a similar question about that last bullet that Dave just addressed, what that was going to encompass, and if it would allow folks who are outside the classroom to better be able to access those IHB credits. And we talked more about that master's piece and all the ins that might come out of that conversation, how large and in detailed it may become.
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, we didn't, and I think we didn't catch the language about removing masters, but I think that the tenor of our conversation really would be supportive of the shift in language you suggested there. And if we look at the verbs on the whole Article 21, it's clarify and streamline. So to the points you were making, Dave, it's not about doing away with an IHB process. It's not about significantly changing the spirit of people having access to salary advancement. It's just about clarifying, streamlining. So we chose those verbs pretty carefully to try to just represent that it's not an overhaul necessarily. It's just a more efficient, more clear. So I think that's good.
I didn't know we didn't have numbers for the group. So the other group now.
Group 3, is that what you mean?
Yeah. Yep.
So we were fine with the language as is. We had a couple of notes about grammar. One, that recommendation should read recommendations. And in the bullet about the compensation for co-curricular leadership, instead of, do we need the word leadership in that bullet, or could we just say all leadership opportunities? outside of contract. Just a minor note there. And then we mainly talked about what people are watching on TV. So.
Okay.
We need department in that.
Oh, department.
In other leadership compensation,
Yeah.
did you need the word department?
Yeah, Laura was supposed to say that.
Nancy, you have your hand up.
I just had a question for group number 1 about your suggested language, creating an alternative to. Would that, you're not talking about removing the master's degree, you're talking about creating alternatives in addition to? I'm unclear as to what you meant by that.
So we're trying to capture what our perception of what the intent for the recommendation from the group, and as a part of that comp committee, I can speak a little bit. It's our conversations have not been to create the equivalent of a BA plus 200, right? But if you're going beyond the BA 80, similar to what you'll see from the recommendation from the CTE group, but there are additional I don't want to say difficulties, but it's not just a bunch of extra credits. It's I've used this term in the comp committee group before. You have to earn micro credentials and XY things where you have to do additional work and projects, and so you're collecting classes and certificates and other things to continue moving across the salary schedule. But yet at the same time, still honoring that master's degree. So if you earn that master's degree, you bump all the way over to that side of the box just by having the degree, right? So it's not about removing it. It's about the intent of our conversations have all been centered around, creating a alternative path to the other half of the schedule versus removing it altogether.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from either of the 3 groups? All right, you guys have been at it for an hour and a half now without a break. So what do you think, Mila, Dave, 10 minutes?
Yeah, and could I just ask the group that had a little wordsmithing to do on bullet number 1, could you go into the document and suggest the actual language that you want to see there? But yeah, 10-minute break?
10-minute break? Sounds good.
Okay.
10 minutes. So we'll come
here.
back at 9:42. How's that?
So if when people are back, they'll turn their camera back on, we'll know when to go live again.
There you go. Looks like most of us are back. Mila, so what's your next step?
I think that I think we ought to see if there's, are people good with the language changes that were suggested in the document? I see Darman's added a comment about additional rigorous paths in order to access the certified salary schedule. I wonder, Darman, are you suggesting that that would be the language we'd use in the charge, or whether that would be a byproduct of the committee being sure that alternative paths were indeed rigorous? Can you?
Well, I was attempting to put it, like, propose it into the charge, because that's what you told us to do during the break. But I'm not a good wordsmith. But that was just sort of my idea, was to somehow communicate that we value higher education, that we value education as an institution, but there are alternate paths we'd like to explore to increase the effectiveness of our teaching.
Anybody have any reaction to Darman's suggestion?
I like the idea of keeping it something like that. I've never loved the word rigorous, but I think that it does get the point across. But I like the idea for sure.
Other comments, questions around Darman's attachment? I should say Darman's addition, not attachment.
We can get a thesaurus out and figure out something for rigorous. It's not a problem.
The only other word that kept coming to my mind was equivalent. Instead of alternative, it was more equivalent to say that it's.
Other comments?
I see that Darren just joined us. Do you want to have him check in, Darren?
Oh yeah, Darren, thank you very much. And thanks, my life. Just saw him pop on as you were there. So Darren, the check-in is who are you? Position in district. How are you? Time constraints, issues or elephants, expectations, and then what's another profession that just absolutely fascinates you? So go ahead, Darren.
All right. I'm Darren Oliver, Principal of Silver Creek. No time constraints now. My meeting's over, so my apologies. We're getting a new roof at Silver Creek, so I probably shouldn't have been wearing flip-flops on the roof. Sorry, Mr. Godowski. Didn't know we were going on the roof. I thought just looking at the ceiling tiles falling was enough, but very excited for that. Expectations is to dial in today's agenda. no issues or elephants. Another profession that, what was the word? Interests me or fascinates me.
Fascinates you, yeah.
Is being a musician. I'm not a musician, but I absolutely love music. I love concerts, and I think it would be awesome to be like a drummer in a band and travel all through the world, because I'm from Kansas, haven't done a lot of traveling, but I think it'd be great to get on a plane with the Rolling Stones and go over somewhere and be their drummer, but I don't have that ability. So that's it. Thanks for my tardiness. Sorry.
No problem. You and Matt need to get together because his was very similar. So
I see the makings of a band.
I do too. I'm in, guys. I'm in.
All right. Yeah. Dave, Matt, Darren. Okay. And then Allison, I think, is going to be our music critic. She'll
There
help
you go.
Keep them.
She'll be our manager. There you go.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
I'll let you know how it's going. I'll let you know how you're doing.
Yeah.
There you go.
She'll provide feedback. All right. So we've been looking, Darren, we've been looking at in the compensation committee folder of our shared drive, we've got a document that's a draft of the compensation study committee MOA. And so if you find your way there, we're just looking at the proposed language and talking about some word choice and just trying to zero in on our charge to this committee for next year.
Okay, any other questions, comments from anybody in any of the groups on what you've got right now? So Dave, Mila, I don't see any. So what's your next step? What do you want to do with this?
I think I'd like to put a pin on the MOA and then have Mila walk us through our attempt to move the committee recommendations into contract language from yesterday with the CTE folks. Mila, does that sound good to you?
Sure. And then would we try to incorporate the language that's been suggested today and bring it back to this group for a final look-see and approval? And do you see that being later this morning, or do you see that being the next time we meet?
I think it depends on how the day goes, right? Doing, if we can today, if not, doing it next time is sufficient. Okay. The only hesitation I have to approving today is as we go through the rest of compensation, if there's anything else we end up needing to charge or ask the committee to work on next year. So I hesitate in final ratification until we are closer to wrapping up all of compensation, because things have popped up in the past that we've thrown on that MOA as a result of those conversations.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think if we could get to a place of agreement on the language as it exists and then leave it open for any additions, that'd be a good outcome. Okay. Let me direct the team then back to the compensation committee folder and to the draft article 21.11, 21.11 CTE salary steps. Okay, so this is all new language, so it's all in caps. This was an attempt to take the recommendations of the committee that you heard yesterday and to turn that into language. And Article 21 is the intermediate salary step article that we were actually just talking about in our last conversation. And so you'll notice that Article 21 has a last article 21.10. So this would just be a new article 21.11 added to the end. And then there are a couple of other places on the second page in Appendix A where there is mention of, of CTE and credits and whatnot. So let me just quickly walk you through what we've got. So the language right now reads that intermediate salary credits will be awarded to non-degreed CTE teachers for coursework completed for industry-related certification or licensure. Approved coursework will be calculated by total contact hours for the combination of courses into quarter-hour increments as described in 21.5. So 21.5 has a limiter that's been problematic for our CTE people up to now. You know, it has to come in 5 or more or greater hour increments in order to be translated to quarter. And this was one of the problems you were seeking to solve. So we hoped that if we could calculate by total contact hours for the combination of courses into quarter hour increments, that would address that. Continuing, for each lane advanced from BA80/MA20, that one column, up to MA80, at least 10 quarter hours must be accredited university or district related professional development on pedagogical practices. District in-services credit for these courses shall be awarded in accordance with Article 21.5. So at least 10 hours has to be on pedagogy. You heard the committee talking about a value there yesterday. And the credit for those courses would be awarded much the same way it is for every other certified teacher. Movement from BA80, MA20 from that column where they currently max out up to MA80 will require coursework to be directly related to the career and technical education teacher's current area of teaching. We described the composition of the review panel. This was in the recommendation from yesterday, so that's just replicated there. We set a frequency of meeting as 2 times per year to create and monitor a list of providers of certification and licensure programs that supports district CTE programs. And then we go on to describe some of the criteria that the review panel will use in its determinations about coursework, just so that people understand, you know, what might be part of the determination. This is all lifted straight from the recommendation yesterday. I won't read it all to you, but it's just a list of considerations that that review panel would use as it adds providers or adds licenses or certifications to the list. I'll just plow on through into the Appendix A part of the document. So we have this section in Appendix A right now, Section 6 that, oh, Linda, I guess Linda has.
Yeah, Linda, I was going to stop you. Linda?
Can we just review the wills to shalls also? Which ones need to be changed from will to shall?
Sure.
Thank you.
We can loop back to that. So in the Appendix 6, or Section 6, it's a section devoted to career and tech ed teachers. We thought that Section A, that applies to your initial hire and your initial placement. Nothing there needs to change. Section B, if you look at the language I struck, it's really outdated. I believe Dave, who serves as a historian of this document, recollects that just referred to an older way of doing business and maintaining some movement. But you see, it talks about 2,000 hours for horizontal movement. And we use 2,000 hours as a year of service equivalent, and that's vertical movement. And so that paragraph B just doesn't really make any sense. It's not in use. It's we've just described a whole process for moving horizontally across the schedule. We don't need this paragraph, which is conflicting information. Paragraph C speaks about how non-degreed CTE teachers are placed on initially, and it includes, we added some language to just, instead of keeping it limited to professional development, college or university credit, which was the problem, we added the approved industry certification coursework. And then we struck the line about maximum advancement, since that was part of the point of this work. And Roddy, can you, or Chad, can you admit Sandy? I see she's waiting. The rest of the language from that appendix stays the same. And then we just in caps at the very bottom, we wanted to include a note for our summary change document. We don't believe this needs to be contract language, but we want to include in the summary for people the fact that for the 2021 school year, we're going to have a window of opportunity for existing employees, CTE non-degreed employees, to submit back paperwork. There are deadlines for submission in most cases for things, but we want a chance. And November 9th represents 90 days from the first day of school. That's kind of compliant, consistent with other deadlines in the document. And so we would just like to gather up any back paperwork from people and get them placed appropriately, if we can, just in the first part of the school year. So that's the reason for that notation. It wouldn't apply beyond the first 90 days of the school year, so we didn't really want to put it in the negotiated language. So let me pause there, and Dave, you can see.
Laura Lippy has her hand up. So, Laura.
Laura, you muted.
Sorry, no, I tried to alternate A and I hit alternate something and it asked me to leave the meeting. So that I was sorry. Whew. I just had a question on the very first paragraph where it says, I think it's like the second sentence. It says approved coursework will be calculated by the total contact hours for the combination of courses. I saw that you put the S in parentheses, so I was wondering if it has to be a combination of courses, or if will be calculated by the total contact of hours for the course or combination of courses. I just wanted to make sure I understood that one.
Yeah, the intent was to basically to allow the bundling of courses, so they turn in 40 hours. I'm making numbers up, but 40 contact hours worth of courses. Then those would be able to be bundled and then converted into quarter hours per our process of doing it for every 5 hours into quarter hours as listed out in the agreement. But it could be a single course or courses, right? Like it could be one. There were some that they were always able to turn in, so we didn't want to limit that. If it wasn't, didn't want to force them to combine courses, and we wanted to make it clear that they could combine courses to get to the total number of credit hours. And we did struggle with that wording. So in small groups, if people come up with a better phraseology for that, love to have you guys comment on that. That was a particular section we were struggling to write out, because it's difficult to write that kind of statement. I see Dorman's hands up. I did want to point out one thing real quick before taking Dorman's question. The way we wrote this up, we specifically wrote it up in a way that would not have the CTE teachers using the Appendix F BA enrichment plan or the Appendix A MA80 plan, because that harkens back to the same problem we had before with their content area courses not fitting into those general criteria. So this would create a more alternative path that is, we believe, as stringent, at least what the committee's recommendation was as stringent as the Appendix F or the BA or the BA enrichment plan or the MA80 requirements to slide across the salary schedule. So it does move those people off those two plans, but the thought is that this is an equivalent of rigor and not difficulty, but value add to both the educator and the system.
Dorman.
Also hang on before Dorman.
Sorry, go ahead, Laura.
I just wanted to say thank you for putting this all together, because it is awesome.
Dorman.
So I probably missed this yesterday, but in the charge to the group that's going to be evaluating this, it refers to the guaranteed and viable curriculum, which is our current, is what we do currently. I was wondering if, and I missed this yesterday, I apologize. Maybe we should just say the district's curriculum instead of the guaranteed and viable curriculum, instead of enshrining one particular method or way that we're doing it currently. I don't know. It was just a thought there. It's more flexible if we just refer to the district's goals and current curriculum.
Deborah? You're muted, Deborah.
Sorry. In section C, the word "and" was struck down after the bolded approved industry certification coursework. And I think we need to have it or college university credit. It's a grammatical thing, but I think we have to have that and. Does everybody see where I am?
Linda? Linda, you're muted.
Thank you. In section B, where you have decided maybe that language isn't necessary, I was a vocational teacher before I became a counselor, and this language had to do with you had to have your teaching license, and then you had to have a vocational certificate. And it's been a long time since I've had to have that vocational certificate. I don't know what the current regulations are for recertifying for voc ed, but what this is referring to was that there were some areas that had to go back into the field periodically to refresh their knowledge in marketing or business. And so that's what that 2,000 hours referred to. I've been away from it long enough to not know what the requirements are for recertifying for voc ed. Mila, can you help me with that?
I'm not going to pretend to be the expert on all the CTE endorsement areas. It's not my understanding that most have to go back into the field. They do have to take some of their industry recertifications, like you heard Marv talking about the ASEs. Those require recertification, and so it's much the same as licensed teachers going back and honing their skills on ELL essentials, or some new permutation of the practice, new information, new endorsements. But that's treated in my experience much in really similar ways. Is this required for recertification? We have rules about things you do during the contract day at district expense can be used for recert credit with the state, which is kind of the process you're talking about, or things you do on your own time, on your own dime, that can be used for salary advancement credit. And so those rules and expectations would stay the same. I think the recert process for CTE teachers and licensed non-CTE teachers is very similar.
Okay,
Yeah.
but what I'm talking about is the business education teacher who has to have, in order to be to teach those programs, they have to have that 2,000 hours.
Yeah, that's the initial placement, and that's
right. But then this would say, if you went in the summer and you did some secretarial work or something like that, if you accumulated 2,000 hours of the work related to your job, outside of your job, then you could move on the salary schedule. The language is quite old. It's been around for a long time.
So I would argue, the two things that, I just looked up the business recertification information on CDE's website, and there's no, there's credit requirements and clock hour stuff as far as like learning, but there is no, if you're a currently serving teacher in the business services, there's no requirement to return to do industry work. And I would also say that if someone was doing that for an educational experience to enhance their course, that they could still apply through the IHB process to be able to get salary credit advancement if that was a direction that they so choose and wanted to apply for, because that would fall under that educational experience if they could talk about how it was for their coursework or that kind of stuff. But yeah, I've flipped through business marketing and a bunch of the other CTE endorsements, and I don't see anything, nor did Marv or the other members of our group that was looking at this talk about having to do physical work. Many of them do, right, during the summer and other things, but not as a requirement for relicensure. And to the best of my knowledge, No, we haven't had
Did we-
anyone apply for that, this language.
Could you check with the director of OCED and see, is that a path that we can look at to see if this language is applicable at all?
Mila, would you be able to shoot them a message real quick?
Do that. Yeah, my team has not used that paragraph in anybody's living memory in our department. So, but I can certainly check with Christy Weaver, who's new to our district, our current director of vocational ed. But I think Dave was answering the question, Linda, that I was kind of struggling with, which is there's another pathway for people to get credit for returning to like industry experience.
Right.
There exists a pathway. So,
but the group I'm talking about are the certified teachers, not the CTE teachers at the Bowman Center or the North Washington Center. These would be people that were within the school system that I know home economics used to have, consumer and family, there's my age, consumer and family studies used to have a program called HERO, which was home ec related occupations. I know it's something different now, but just to make certain that we either don't stop someone or that we maybe even let people know that this was something that is available.
Well, I think every teacher in the system, CTE and non-CTE, does have the ability to use the educational advancement, educational experiences part of Article 21 to translate whatever experience into salary credit if the committee approves it. So there is that opportunity for all teachers right now. Yeah, I'll run this paragraph past Linda or Christy and just see if she has any reaction to it or
Okay.
any knowledge about it.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
If there aren't any more questions, Dave, I think I would suggest to just move us into small groups again to have people discuss it and noodle through it together, and then come back in 15 minutes or so and report out, and then we can figure out next steps from there depending on the report outs.
All right. Any other questions before we, Mila, were you going to say something? Sorry.
I was
Go
just
ahead.
going to ask people again, if you have specific language changes, put it in the comments. That's really helpful.
Yep. All right. Any other questions? We're going to move back to small groups. Chad for 15 minutes again. So I see none. So Chad, go ahead and put us in the small groups again.
Just a note, I'm here now, so I don't know if I was already assigned to a group or not.
Thanks, Sandy.
You are.
Hey, Roddy, you gonna throw me somewhere?
we'll be ready whenever anybody's back. Everybody's back.
It's like people are filtering in now, Mila.
Looks like we're all back.
All right, so let's start again with group one and talk about any changes you made and where you went. So group one.
I can do that. We had a relatively quick discussion. We talked a little bit about, let everyone kind of read and absorb the documents. In general, was kind of I made a similar comment yesterday when we were drafting some of this, which was, if this is the direction that our CTE folks believe is equitable and fair, then who are we to say that, it's not? But that was kind of a piece of where we were all kind of at. We made one language adjustment recommendation in the same section C that was in there. We suggested that since that's supposed to seems to be more of a list, because it talks about, it's to use the word or instead of and made more sense instead of and or, because we're not saying you have to use any one of those. It could be coursework, it could be university credit, so there's no we believe it should be an or instead of an and or would make more sense to us. And then at the end, we were just kind of chatting a little bit about what this might look like for if we were to develop an alternative pathway for non-master's degree people that is both rigorous and a value add to the educator and to the people. And I was floating around the idea of, instead of doing industry certifications, having like a targeted, micro credential or certification done by the district in advanced ELL training or gifted and talented instruction or something to that effect. We were just kind of discussing that as we were transitioning back.
Okay, group two.
Okay, we had a conversation. We looked at some of the language starting at the top about that contact hours. Felt like the sentence as it stands right now makes sense. We had a little bit of a conversation about the use of the term guaranteed and viable curriculum. And I guess I was interested to hear perhaps Bo's perspective on, is that kind of a trendy jargon term for district curriculum, or do you see that as a long-lasting terminology that is different than district curriculum? Could you maybe share your thinking on that, Bo?
Sure. It's a commonly accepted word for describing what a curriculum has to be in order to have any impact. Ultimately, I don't see it as a trend. I see it as research-based. A curriculum has to be guaranteed, meaning no matter where you go to school, what classroom you land in, you're going to get access to the same standards, the same experiences. And viable means it's something that can legitimately be done in the amount of time that students are in classrooms. So they're descriptors to what makes a curriculum effective. I would hope that moving forward, we'd never have a curriculum that was unguaranteed or inviable. So that's my take on that.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. Then, down into the rest of it. At the very bottom, we commented on the note. I think something that as I was talking to my group, I realized this 90-day period of time in which we give people to round up all of their coursework and submit it typically happens when you first come to the district for initial employment. And the deal is if you round up all of your coursework and everything within those first 90 days, we establish your initial placement, and then we retroactively pay it back to the first day of school in August. And so I'm actually not sure that this is necessary. And so we talked a little bit about both sides of this. Are we wanting to say to this group of people, yeah, go round up everything you've done since you were employed with us and get it turned in by November 9th. And if you do that, then we will retroactively pay you the bump from August, September, October, or should we just treat this group the way we treat everyone else, which is as you earn credit and as you turn it into the HR team, then on the next paycheck, you see the bump. Do we want to give this group some kind of a retroactive bump as sort of this initial action? Or shall we just say, yeah, listen, we've changed our process and you have a chance to turn things in. And as soon and when you do, you'll see the corresponding increase in your salary. It's kind of a question to the group.
Dave?
I mean, I don't think I was intending when I said the 90 days when we were talking for it to be the retro piece. I picked 90s as a reasonable length of time because that's the reasonable length of time we give new employees to gather materials and whatnot. It was more of a pluck out of the air of a number that we commonly use for time. I do think, allowing them to collect their materials and turning them in, because there will be stuff from before their employment that based on this new language that we would allow them to turn in, but we don't allow them to turn in after that 90-day period based on the language. So there is need to be, I think, a window of time if we're allowing them to turn in stuff from before their employment for them to be able to turn in, because otherwise the language as is would deny them those access to those credits. And so if we give them that time to turn it in, 90 days, 60 days, 10 days, 10 days might be a little short, but that my intent for the 90 days was just to give a reasonable length of time to find materials gathered and have them submitted.
Allison.
Yeah, I just have a question / clarification on that. So is this they're resubmitting stuff that they've previously turned in that might have pushed them over that threshold or into the MA? Because I'm just wondering, if they don't submit it, then we don't give them a pay bump. So it's really in their best interest to do it. And if they wait 2 years to do it, is that a big issue?
Until relatively recently, they've been able to turn in 0 things because none of their stuff qualifies. And so they will have stuff to turn in based off of the new language. But because some of that was from before their employment and it's after the 90-day window, we don't accept things after the 90-day window, except for university credits, even with the way we've listed this kind of language stuff out. And maybe I'm incorrect in my interpretation of our new writing and that the window doesn't apply to them. But traditionally for IHB non-credit stuff, we say you can't turn anything in like other districts in service credit, that kind of stuff. After that initial 90 days, we don't accept any of it. And we also, I guess that was the point I was making with that 90 days. Anything that might be stuff that had to be turned in when they initially employed can be turned in, and then everything else just moves them forward like if they would normally. But most of them don't have a lot turned in or any turned in. Jason and I worked through one particular CTE teachers to see what we could work out, and about half of it, not even half of it, were we able to bundle and put together to try to match the language, which is part of what drove some of the work that this committee did.
So but some of it could be like a resubmission. They're like, I turned this in and you rejected it, but maybe now I'll see. Am I correct? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of makes sense to me then, if it's so they're not just digging into all their stuff that they've ever done and then all of a sudden, I think that makes sense.
Mila, go ahead.
Thanks. Dave, I heard you say something about work done before they came here for employment, and I don't think that was our intention. Can you speak more to what you might be thinking in that? I think it's work done since you've been employed with us.
So, so some of these credential classes that we were talking about for initial placement onto the salary schedule that they would have been able to turn in, they might, because the 4 or 5 year lengths of certifications, we'd be asking them to wait 5 years before they could turn it in. And my thought I heard from the committee was to allow them to turn that stuff in as part of the way they would have done their initial placement. So give them the intent, give them a window of time to get all the stuff that they would have gotten normally on their initial placement, and then move forward from there as listed out in the agreement.
Kathy Plummer.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, in our group, and I could be wrong about this, it did feel like it was a rolling possibility that once you turned it in is when you would start your getting the new salary bump. So we didn't, so going back to saying the 90, I guess I would want to be super clear with people. Is there a window of time that beyond that you can't ever turn in your previous stuff? Is this a one-time offer? Is this a whenever you get to it? So I guess as we've gone, I've gotten more confused about exactly what people can and can't do and what the timeline means.
Some of your confusion might be because I don't think I realize, to Allison's point, it's like in your best interest to turn in credit as you get it. But if you choose not to, Dave, do we currently have language that gives people a deadline? I guess I should be aware of that, but I don't directly handle it too much.
Yeah, so so things like district in-service credit and other non-transcripted credits, we only accept them currently in the initial stage of your employment. So what I was and with the credits that we're just now creating, either we're accepting all of them whenever we can because we're treating them as just like college credits, or we're treating them like district in-service credits, which gives them that initial like placement period of time to turn things in. And so maybe my comments are really more of like, how is it going to be processed versus in this initial like rollout phase, the landing of this conversation for our existing employees. So if we're treating it just like college credit and they can turn it in if it's valid, then the 90 days is, we can waive that, we can strike that altogether.
Yeah.
If we're treating it like district in-service credit, where we're telling them they only have 90 days to turn it in, and then we're not accepting it after this, only new stuff moving forward. How do we, does that make sense what I'm saying? Like, do we, are we taking old stuff or moving forward stuff? That's the point.
I have a question. Is there an article that says professional development credit only has 90 days to get turned in, or is that just a practice?
So that is a practice, not a remember when I said streamlining and
yeah, see folks, this is the stuff we're getting into. So yeah.
That is the long accepted practice that you have 90 days to put in that stuff, and then anything from the past no longer is accepted, and only stuff moving forward from the agreement. And so I do apologize if I confused everybody, but this is the confusing world of IHB that I live in all the time. So yeah, our current practice is to not accept old stuff past the 90 days that you're with us, and then except for college credits. You can turn those in whenever you feel like it. And then everything else is after that 90-day window.
Shelley. Did we lose Shelley somehow?
Shelley needed to check out. She wrote in the chat that she had to leave. So
all right, no problem. Okay. So where are we with this?
So go ahead. I guess I would suggest that we probably leave the note that's in there as it is. Let's not promise a retroactive payment. Let's give a 90-day window in light of the practice Dave describes. But then I look forward to cleaning up or clarifying the process, streamlining the process in 21 to eliminate this sort of practice that's one way for PD and a different way for university credit. So I would suggest we can just leave that note as it is. Give folks 90 days, get things turned in, since the current environment for everyone else is you don't get to turn in PD after 90 days.
We still have one group that hasn't reported. So group 3.
So the one thing that we talked about was in the first paragraph where it defines who this change is for, it says non-degreed teachers. I was wondering, is this going to preclude somebody? I was wondering if we should make the language match the position and not the teacher coming in. So I don't think we're in the situation now, but it could be possible that an auto mechanic teacher comes in with a bachelor's degree. And then the way I read the language would be that he would be required to get a master's to move past that MA 80. So, and I think our intention is that the training and the education should match the position they're in, not necessarily their background. So I was wondering if we should change the language to say not non-degreed teachers, but teachers in a position that do not require a degree. So that was it.
Okay, thank you. All right, where are we at with this and where do you want to go?
I'm thinking about that last comment.
Okay.
I think that's, yeah, I think that makes some sense. I probably need to noodle through it with my team in case there's any back end consequence to, yeah, a teacher who comes in with a bachelor's, even though it's not required. And then how do you count that for initial placement and then subsequent placement hours? Yeah, anyway.
And we talked about it for like someone who came in with a bachelor's who then went into a CTE position, but didn't necessarily want to go for the master's, but wanted to continue to advance past like that BA 80, MA 20 column in order for it to be equitable as someone else who didn't have the degree, making sure that it could be used for both types of situations.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's a good suggestion that we'd be able to adopt. I just want to think about it a little bit.
All right, where do we go from here?
I know this might be a little funky, but we keep wondering if Jim, Dave, Mila, and Chris and I could sidebar for a minute and then let everyone take a break and then come back in like 15 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever and talk that through with the whole group after our sidebar.
Okay, so Chad, what Dave just asked is to have Mila, Dave, Chris, Jim, and I in a separate breakout room and give everybody else a 10, 15-minute break. Can you do that for us, Chad?
Sure, I will create a breakout room if you want to type those names in the group chat.
I can do that.
Can you let us know if it's 10 or 15? Just so I know.
Let's do 10 minutes.
10
okay.
Minutes? Okay, we'll do 10 minutes.
So what you thinking, Dave?
We're not quite in breakout yet. We're still working on it.
All right.
Yeah, I thought I got in. I'm like,
For those of you who are waiting patiently, we are returning back. So when we get everybody kind of mostly back, we can go back into live session and report out.
Dave, I kind of lost track of time. How close were we to the 10 minutes?
We're at 12 minutes, so not too terribly bad. Not too terribly bad.
Okay. They can give us 2 minutes, right?
Hey, Chad or Ronnie, can you return us back to live session? There we go. So I guess, Dave, do you want me to talk through about what we talked about, or how do you want to?
Yeah, go ahead. And I think we've got everybody back. So go ahead, Dave, and take it.
All right. So what we discussed was what to do as our next steps in this process, both today and how to wrap up compensation. So what I'm going to briefly describe kind of an outline of what we think we should do. We talked about we could spend some time this afternoon for our last hour talking story around compensation related matters, interest and options. We wouldn't get particularly far, and then we would have to restart when we came back into session. Kind of the general feel was our story was probably best told close to when we were discussing interest and options, and so that we should probably be doing that at least starting that on the same day. So our thoughts and recommendations is going to be so that we kind of wrap up and close off this conversation today. And then Mila and I are going to be drafting with the communications team a shared communication to go out to the system to report on where we're at, where we're going, and our schedule moving forward. Then we talked a little bit about what to do about the next step for wrapping up compensation conversations. Chris and I discussed we don't believe that we're going to get any information that's actionable by Friday, which puts the 8th and the 9th to being potentially ineffective days. And since we also have our CSCA colleagues who are waiting on us to figure out what to do, or their half of the negotiations, we felt like we needed to make sure that we gave everybody notice if we had to extend or change dates, enough notice to be able to make that happen. And so we are suggesting that we reschedule the 8th and 9th to the mornings of the 15th and 16th. In the intermediate time, Chris and staff is going to work on budgets and numbers and prepare information so that if we don't get enough information from the legislator by the 15th and 16th, that we can write the thing I refer to as if-then statements yesterday, which would be something like, if we can spend 10% of the CARES money, we're going to do this, then what do we do? If we can spend these amount, what can we do? And so working with staff to creating a better, cut points for those so that we can limit the number. So we don't have 12 of them. We, have a more reasonable number that we can work with moving forward. And so the idea would be that the 15th and 16th, we would discuss the years of service credit, wrap up, ratifying the two, tentatively agreeing to the two language changes we were working on today. Then dealing with telling story, interest, and options on the 2 years cohorts for years of service, the 6 to 10 people, and then general compensation, the general compensation package, story, interest, and options on the 15th and 16th, needing to have a decision in the hands of members by the close of business on the 16th so that we could put out whatever we did for ratification. The idea would be open from the 16th to the 23rd, close of business on the 23rd. to then present to the Board of Education on their scheduled meeting on the 24th. That's kind of what we talked about.
Mila, Chris, do you have anything to add to that, or are you good to go?
Good to go.
Okay. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is how do we wrap up what we did today? What do you want? What do you need in order to wrap that up?
I think we're good. I think we just got to finish noodling through the last adjustment that Marty made. I see Marty and I think Kathy had a question. More than glad to talk about questions as well about anything we were working on today or the plan we just laid out.
Okay, so I have Marty, Kathy, and Chris.
I don't have a problem with the proposed changing of our timeline. I'm just wondering, how likely do we think that we'll have guidance that's actionable by the 15th? And, you know, knowing that we have to get the budget in and we have to get something ratified, I think at some point, maybe it's next week, is there time to talk about what that process would look like if we do not have guidance?
That's what I was referring to with Chris and the staff coming up with what is our realistic money options in those different scenarios with that additional guidance, so that we can draft that up on the 15th and 16th if we don't have anything from the legislator. The 15th and 16th puts us up to our legislated statute statuted deadlines for ratification by both the association and the district for their budget. So that's what's going to be worked on in the next week.
Kathy, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the board is already looking at maybe needing to meet on the 29th instead of the 24th. They've pulled everybody. We haven't made a final decision about moving the meeting, but we're also recognizing we have to come up to the end of the deadline. So just wanted to put that out there.
Chris?
I was just going to respond to Marty's thing. I think just taking the temperature of the broader group to make sure that they would be supportive of a 15th, 16th reschedule would be helpful. I hope that people will be, but we need to just check in. And then on Marty's question, a lot of what I've been dealing with this morning is a lot of text messages and emails from colleagues who are just getting progressively more frustrated, as am I, about being stuck in place around CARES Act. And so I think there will be opportunities, including a conference call that's now been set with the governor and the commissioner of ed on Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. to try to get ourselves unstuck. Right now, I think their agenda is talking more about a small segment of the funds that Congress has dictated to be awarded on a grant and application basis. And our focus is on the other 90% of the funds and getting more flexibility on how we can put that in play. So I think Friday will be a good opportunity to create some more momentum around flexibility and clarity, and that we'll have more of that as we come together on the 15th and 16th. And if not, then you're right, Marty. I think we're either going to have to be in a spot of slowing things down. There's been some talk before about the legislature changing when budget adoption would be until the end of July instead of June 30th. That would be a possibility that everyone would have to discuss the pros and cons of. Or if not, you work with what you know and you get into the if-then scenarios that Dave Lockley was describing. But I think we're going to know those pathways in a lot firmer way in a week and a half's time.
So Chris did ask for a thumbs on the 15th and 16th. Can I see the thumbs on if you can make that time? The only one that's iffy is Matt, I believe. Oh, and Deborah. Matt and Deborah. So, okay. Did you want to say why you're there, or you'll just time?
For me, I'm planning on going out of town to be with my daughter, and I will have access to Wi-Fi, but just don't know if I can commit, but totally am behind the philosophy behind it.
Matt?
Yeah, same. I'm frankly just trying to figure out getting out of here after a really rough 3 months. And so this continuing of this process bumped every single week is kind of messing my life up, but I'll figure it out. Yeah, that's why I'm sideways.
All right. And then Mila, Dave, is there anything we needed to wrap up what we did today? Did you need a thumbs on it or anything around that, or you okay
No,
with where it's at?
Nope.
I think our feeling is to put a pin in, to let the conversation and the language just kind of settle and percolate a little bit, and come back and at the probably the very start of our next meeting on the 15th to just revisit and say, has anybody got any new thoughts? Here's what some of the research in the meanwhile added up to. Here's kind of a final draft of what we think would be workable. Hopefully not spend a whole lot of time on just everybody getting their eyes on it and going, so that's the goal anyway.
All right, sounds good.
Would it be helpful to have a tentative final draft out prior to that Monday?
I think it probably would be. And so we could aim for that. Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So we're ready for checkout. Is that correct? All right. So just quick checkout thought for the day. And I'm going to start with Allison.
Yeah, I'm feeling in limbo. That's how I feel.
Deborah.
Same, a little frustrated.
Heather Espinoza.
I would agree. I think we did good conversation on what we did or able to tackle today. But yes, limbo is a good word, Allison.
Bo.
Sorry, struggling. Yeah, nobody likes a finish line you can't see, but I'm proud of what we were able to get done.
Chris.
Yeah, ditto.
Heather Grecius.
All good.
Dorman.
I don't like uncertainty.
Nancy.
Work we did today was good. Like everyone else, a little frustrated that we have to carry this on.
Laura. Leppy.
Same as Nancy. I'm glad that we got some of the stuff talked about and some of the stuff on the table and out in the open so that we can discuss it. But it is always hard when there's so many unknowns.
Dave.
I'm grateful, actually. I am grateful for everything that you guys are doing, everyone's commitment, everyone's willingness to do the hard work, regardless of the inconvenience and everything else. I've decided a while ago in this pandemic to not be frustrated and not be upset, but just be grateful for the things that are and grateful for the things that aren't. So that's where I'm at.
Marty.
I'm not as good of a person as Dave Lockley. I'm frustrated, not with this group. I do feel grateful for this group and the work we've accomplished. It's just frustrating to feel like the fate of so many is in the hands of so few who don't communicate with anybody.
Laura Mitchell.
I agree with everything everyone said. There's days and moments when you can feel like Dave Lockley, and then there's days and moments where you feel like, how are we going to get through tomorrow? So it's just on the roller coaster.
Yeah. Darren.
Control what you can control.
Kathy.
Thoughtful discussion on some good topics, but yeah, overall powerlessness for the other information and discussion.
Matt.
Yeah, I agree with the sentiment of the group.
Mila.
I'm grateful for the grammarians in the group who help us keep our language tight and clear. So thanks for that.
Sandy. Oh, she's on the phone.
All right, I got Colleen on the phone. Did everybody see that on the side there? And I was just kind of updating her on 2111 and about just the fact that we haven't finalized anything. And I also told her about you guys doing the breakout group, and we were deciding to put off the dates and the discussion until the 15th, 16th. And she's fine with that. She'll actually be home by then, so her internet won't be an issue then. So, but yeah, we were just having a brief conversation about just you guys were about being frustrated. So we hope we can find out.
Okay, Linda.
I guess my word for the day is adaptability. I just feel like we have to continue to figure out what we can do with the information that we have and hope that that gets better quick.
Jim.
My friends would tell me to stay positive, so I tell you I'm positive. I don't like the place we find ourselves.
Yeah, folks, we're in weird times, but you guys do fantastic work, and I really appreciate all you do, and we will see you on the 15th. Take care.